Hello, fellow hunters. I didn't expect to be doing a new video on this so soon after the last one on the topographic map in Monster Hunter Wilds logo. This is actually going to be a follow-up to that video, so if you haven't watched it, there will be a card to the video in your upper right corner. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give y'all a quick announcement. In honor of the 1,000 subscriber milestone here on YouTube, I'm hosting our very first giveaway. This is a small thank you for viewers like you who've supported my channel and have been an integral part of its growth. I'm truly grateful for all the interactions we've gotten to have together, so be sure to enter for your chance to win. The Gleam link will be in the description below, and there's multiple ways to enter. I'll be announcing the winner of the giveaway within a week of Monster Hunter Wilds coming available for pre-order, so we've got plenty of time to enter. Share it with your friends too. I'll be delivering the game via redeemable code, Steam gift, or PayPal in the USD amount of the standard edition, so slap that subscribe button to stay informed, and good luck, hunters. So the comment section in my map video brought up a lot of interesting points with a variety of interpretations on the imagery. In fact, the majority of the comments actually disagreed with my take, drawing different conclusions along the lines of tribal drawings, hieroglyphics from an ancient civilization, down to the pattern on the lightning rods when struck. This is one of the best parts of theory crafting, where the community begins to bring to light new ideas to explore and opens different interpretations for conclusions to draw. And that got me thinking, what if we're looking at this the wrong way? What if it's not meant to be taken at face value, where those patterns don't suggest something directly, but rather indirectly, and we need to think out of the box? In a prior video, I touched on Capcom's patterns in development and imagery. The video highlights the implications of the very specific choices in their designs, where we can deduce the Monster Hunter mainline team's intentions from what the imagery suggests. Whether it's the logo, or the brilliant aesthetic in the presentation of the trailer, or just by observing patterns in their dev cycles, there's absolutely a sense of cohesiveness to their brand, acting as the Monster Hunter calling card, as it were. They love to treat us to little hints and nods, so fellow theorists in the community have something to speculate on. There's this clear tendency to make references to the environment, or to draw parallels between the artistic presentation in their imagery and the types of themes that will be explored in the game. It's that same video where I discussed prominent landmarks in the trailer, specifically how particular parts of the trailer quite literally stick out in contrast to the rest of the environment. The lightning rods. As a clearly man-made device not naturally occurring, they would have had to have been placed there intentionally by someone. It's clear that these lightning rods were meant to serve a purpose, drawing away lightning from striking the ground beneath and acting as a beacon of protection from the periodic lightning storms. But there's something missing here. If man-made lightning rods were constructed across the wilderness as a form of protection, why don't we see towns or civilization to protect? In fact, there's nothing. Just a large expanse of open desert and savanna. This led me to conclude that Capcom might lean into ideas of an ancient civilization with advanced technology. The comments quickly educated me, by the way, on the Elder Dragon War, where a highly advanced society in Monster Hunter lore quite literally built their own Elder Dragon to fight off other Elder Dragons with. Pretty awesome premise right there, and absolutely something Capcom stands much to gain from fleshing out further. We have yet to really get into the thick of the Monster Hunter backstory in a mainline game. I mean, sure, we have tidbits in the games in the Sky Corridor and Monster Hunter Frontier, for instance, but that's not nearly enough to center an entire narrative around. With only a couple of hints to draw from in Wild's trailer, we won't really know just how far Capcom might explore this ancient civilization angle until we get a chance to experience and understand the story of Wilds for ourselves. But what if Capcom didn't just give us hints? In fact, what if it wasn't a parallel, hint, or pattern, or reflection that they gave us to draw conclusions from, and we've been thinking about this all wrong? Instead, what if they gave us a puzzle? But not just a puzzle, also its key. Now, I'm gonna need you to follow my logic on this because I'm going to need your help. When I examined the logo, my conclusion hinged on taking it at face value, exactly as it was presented. But if this is a puzzle, we've been looking at this with all the puzzle pieces on the table, straight out of the box. The image has yet to come into full view, and only once we arrange the pieces can we see the bigger picture. If taken as is, I just see a topographic map. But each of the comments in the video had their own perspective and interpretation, making it clear that each of these pieces are meant to suggest something, but it's honestly hard to ascertain exactly what that would be. Now, I should have known that there would be code breakers among the ranks of the Monster Hunter community, and one such person may have solved the very first piece of this puzzle. In fact, I've yet to see any creator talk about this, yet this has been lying right under our nose the entire time. Big thanks to Ratchet Games over on Twitter for bringing this to my attention. The fact that they have so few followers despite this find is quite honestly criminal, so go make sure to support them. Their Twitter is in the description below. So what's this puzzle and why does it matter? Oh, I am so glad you asked, because if there's truth to this, we just might have some insight as to not just what Capcom might tease later on in the year, but how they'll tease it. Here we see the Wilds logo. We as a community and many content creators have covered this multiple times already. I imagine it's been etched in your mind for weeks now, haunting your dreams like some sleep paralysis demon, but where I had taken the theme of patterns and drawn conclusions from the context of Capcom's development and aesthetic design, Ratchet Games saw it from a completely different perspective. There are patterns, alright, and those patterns themselves are a puzzle within this puzzle. Take a little know-how, some vectoring, and a bit of contrast, and we can see that the patterns themselves fit together perfectly to create one singular image. In fact, when we look closer, we can see just how cohesive an image it creates, with the angular concurrent lines creating a full picture. On the left, we see what looks like chevrons and two circular pockets. On the right, there are long lines with wide gaps of empty space. And in the middle, a helical pattern, with what appears to be a crescent moon slapped right in the center of it. Now, there are a lot of ways we could go with this. On one hand, we could take the more symbolic, figurative approach where we draw direct parallels to the landscape. There is the helical rock face in the center where the moon could sit during certain positions of its orbit. Then there's the long empty path on the right and the sort of V-shaped mountain range on the left, if you squint a bit. But then there's also the tribal runes interpretation, but that seems a bit of a stretch to me. They don't really look tribal, like what you would think of when you think scrawlings on a cave wall, and those sorts of things would usually be used to depict stories or events, not whatever this is meant to represent. Then there's the lightning rod angle, where I think we're getting a little bit closer, but I'm not completely convinced this is what the puzzle is trying to communicate. Sure, there are some stripes, but their arrangement isn't like what we see in the actual image itself. But then there's the last idea that only came up a couple of times in the comments, and this absolutely got my mind going. Shout out to Charlie C. Light 1466 and Dude 5606 who mentioned a circuit board. From the image on screen, you can see similar ringlets that act as solder joints for each of the components of the board to mount to. You can see these concurrent lines and patterns as they travel in parallel to and from different chips on the board. In a prior video, I compared the mobility options of the mount with the gliding mechanics in popular open-world games. One repeating comparison I've made in those videos is Breath of the Wild, mentioning how circuits and similar imagery signify the technology of an ancient civilization long past. I've also made similar comparisons to the architecture of the Fallen in Final Fantasy XVI, where this theme of highly advanced civilization left its technologies buried when their society came to ruin. The technology in the here and now, as represented by present day in-game, is a far cry from the technological advancement of ages past. And similarly, if Wild's logo is meant to be a circuit board of some sort, the only explanation would be the ancient technology lost to time, far predating the events of the game itself. But here's the problem with that notion. Monster Hunter doesn't present its world in terms of technology. We don't see machines, or at least not as we think of them today, and there are no electronic gadgets or gizmos. Certainly Monster Hunter lore depicts an advanced civilization that waged war against the Elder Dragons, of course, but to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing that suggests they use electricity, much less circuits to drive electronic devices. In fact, much of Monster Hunter reminds me of the Flintstones, where all modern-day amenities were represented as primitive devices that were operated by hand, foot, or lever. All mechanisms were driven manually, where belts, gears, coal, or steam would provide the locomotion needed for a device to operate in this low fantasy setting. This, fellow hunters, is where you come in, and why I need your help. If the pieces of the Monster Hunter title are meant to be fit together to form a picture, then this begs questions about what other puzzles are yet to be solved. Are there other details that we've missed, and with a little careful observation we might be able to uncover? We've gotten a puzzle, and thanks to the creativity of Ratchet Games, we've been able to solve that puzzle. Yet, we're left with more questions than answers. How do you interpret this image? Does it also look like a circuit board? If so, what details in the Monster Hunter backstory could suggest electronics in the ancient society? Certainly the lightning rods are man-made and had to be placed by someone, and we even have a documented ancient civilization that met their demise in the Elder Dragon War. But I don't know enough about the intricacies of the ancient Monster Hunter lore to be able to make electronics fit. Here we are, having uncovered a crucial piece of information and even solved a puzzle that Capcom's laid out for us, only to find that it's one puzzle out of a bigger puzzle. We might not have all the answers until Capcom comes forward with more information, but I'm confident Capcom is teasing us with puzzles to finish and riddles to solve that will help us better understand the additional information that we'll get later this year. Now, I've been forthcoming about the joys of theory crafting, going so far as to claim that I would be happy to admit when I was wrong. And in light of this information, this is it. I was wrong. I no longer think that this is a topographic map when these lines fit together in a way that would be completely unnatural for geographic topography. But if electronics and circuits don't fit within the ancient civilization, what puzzle pieces are we missing that we still have yet to solve for? Without additional clues or context, what the information we've got suggests simply doesn't fit within the established world of Monster Hunter. Or does it? Now, before I get too far into the Nasuverse, I'm going to try to oversimplify the complex role that mana, magic, and magi all play in this universe. If you're familiar with Fate Stay Night, Melty Blood, or Skihime, you probably understand where I'm going with this. In Universe, there are different forms of magic, and a given magi's effectiveness is genetically determined at birth. Concepts of magic don't manifest as conjured spells from a different dimension or drawing on the supernatural, but instead are represented by a secondary biological nervous system that attunes a mage's life force to magical energy. That secondary nervous system is referred to as a magic circuit, which fundamentally acts as a conduit by which a magus would channel their life force into a form of corporeal energy. Magic, therefore, is not a spell, but rather a physical manifestation of the magus will, utilizing their magic circuits to facilitate the conversion. The aggregate power of the resulting magic is predetermined by the quality and quantity of those magic circuits. Think on how a PC motherboard can have high-quality components that make it fit for overclocking, whereas a cheaper one might blow a capacitor or overheat if you try to push the processor beyond its rated speeds. One great example of this is Aoko Awazaki, whose bloodline has given her a high quality but low quantity of magic circuits. She may have fewer than other more powerful magi, but the quality of her circuits allow her to biologically overclock them to make up the difference, going so far as to even outclass magi who are genetically predisposed to a much higher magical capacity. Holy left field, Batman, where on earth are you going with this? If we look back into the early stages of Monster Hunter before even the initial game's release, Monster Hunter was meant to take shape as a high fantasy RPG, complete with tropes of goblins and magi technology. In the Monster Hunter Illustrations art book, Kaname Fujioka speaks on the earliest concepts of Monster Hunter and its development, stating that we had it in our heads that this was going to be a fantasy game, so our ideas tended to gear toward magic and the like. The world as a whole was much more fantastical as well. I doubt any of us expected it to turn out so analog. And though magic itself didn't really take shape in the way we think of in other common fantasy games like Dark Souls, Witcher, or Final Fantasy, we can see some of the flavor of magic in the element system, and concepts like the Everstream or bioenergy. Now, before you get up in arms, I'm not suggesting that Monster Hunter Wilds will add magic. This just doesn't fall in line with the series as a whole and isn't even teased in the trailer. But there are magic concepts in the gameplay that have been present since the very first game. When exploring notions of ancient civilization in Monster Hunter and suggestions of ancient technology, the imagery of an electric circuit doesn't really fit the low fantasy setting. There's nothing in the backstory of Monster Hunter that would suggest the ancient civilization harnessed the power of electricity. A great example of their technological prowess would be their Dragonator, a truly devastating weapon, but a fully mechanical, highly manual machine that doesn't rely on the power of circuit boards or electricity. So if it's not electricity, and it's not magic, then how can we make a circuit fit? You see, the ancients relied on a different power. In fact, they had quite the ace up their sleeve. One so obvious in a fantasy setting, I never really considered its relevance, what with the prominence of low fantasy imagery. That is, until now. Through passages and rituals, the ancients could reach a state of ascension called the transcended state. This would act as a conduit of connection to other hunters in society, enhancing their combat abilities. This would furthermore weaken a target monster, making them more susceptible to hunter attacks. We're not looking at a circuit board here like we would think in terms of electricity and computer chips. We're looking at a neural network, a hive mind through the use of latent ESP, where each individual member of society could interface with one another and imbue themselves with the knowledge and experience of society itself. This would act like a primitive internet where the tribal knowledge could be accessed to provide even inexperienced hunters an edge on the field. Suddenly, the ideas of a circuit start to fall into place. Furthermore, we know this transcended state is still in use today, albeit on a much smaller scale, used by some hunters in the Mesoporta district just as the ancients did. If we as players take the form of one of these gifted hunters able to tap into this knowledge, what might this mean for Wilds? To start, it could simply be a nod to ancient civilization, or that we'll merely see references to that civilization in Wilds. I think that's a pretty obvious take and something simple enough to execute, where it wouldn't have much, if any, impact on the gameplay mechanics. Or instead, it could signify that the ancient civilization will play an important role in the game's narrative, where the plot points center around understanding and directly exploring ancient ruins or even vignettes in Monster Hunter history. In a prior video, I discussed how Capcom could benefit from exploring these themes further. There's a sense of richness to the history of Monster Hunter's lore, and it's something I feel Capcom could explore more deeply. They've built out much of this already in the supplemental materials outside of the games, but not nearly as much represented in-game. This would be a big win in my mind. Or, if Capcom decides to take it a step further than that, it could go so far as finding ourselves with latent psionic powers, complete with a skill tree that unlocks as we progress through the game. The transcended state could be part of our pre-hunt buffs, or a means by which to augment or swap hunter skills. This could easily evolve the skill swap mechanic introduced in Monster Hunter Rise, or at least provide a mechanic to swap loadouts on the fly. We already see the light bowgun in the pouch after all. Wherever the Monster Hunter team chooses to go with this, I'm convinced that this does confirm some level of ancient society playing a role in either the narrative or the mechanics of Wilds, and this is exciting for me. I would be completely okay with any of these outcomes and only find myself more excited in anticipation of what this could mean. So fellow hunters, what did you see? And what other puzzles might be waiting for us to solve? If there's going to be a heavier emphasis on the ancient civilization, will it bring new mechanics, or like the ancients of old, fall to ruin? It takes a village to solve the puzzles Capcom has laid for us, and I'll be relying on the incredible intelligence and power of the Monster Hunter community to help unravel the mystery before us. If this small puzzle could mean ancient civilization is taking a more prominent place in-game, what other puzzles do we have yet to uncover? I want to hear your thoughts. I'm Jade, and I'm covering Monster Hunter Wilds. The release date, news, and information drops between now and the game's release. If you watched this far, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please make sure that you enter the Monster Hunter Wilds giveaway linked in the description below. You owe it to yourself. There's also a card on screen with a playlist of all the Monster Hunter Wilds videos I've done to date, and I'm eager to discuss them with you. To all hunters, old and new, as always, may the Sapphire Star guide your way.